Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And man, does this do a lot of damage. I was not expecting this at all. I decided to try a couple of different compositions, some different combinations of classes lately to try and see if there was something that could be different than what is the current meta and still be powerful. And in this specific video, we're going to be covering some clips of this composition that I've discovered, which is the Balanced Druid Retribution Paladin Restoration Shaman. And this composition does so much damage. It is an insane healer killer. So if you're looking to just jump into arena, jump into some PvP, run down some healers, get some easy kills, some free raiding, and have some fun and some laughs along the way, then this is really a composition that you need to give a go, because I was not expecting it to be as potent as it was. We were running a Necro Lord Ret Paladin as well as a Kyrian Balanced Druid to empower the Ret Paladin even further with versatility. You can run Sky Fury Totem so that during the Avenging Wrath and Celestial Alignment opener, your crits are going to be really crazy. So like I said, the main point of strategy of this composition that I found against every non-restoration druid team was to target the healer. So in this case, we're fighting a Holy Priest, and they're playing with a Beast Mastery Hunter and a Feral Druid. So our main plan is to Hammer of Justice the healer, use Solar Beam on the healer at the same time. This way they're not able to use any defensives unless they trinket, and to use then other crowd control onto the Feral Druid to prevent them from healing. So this can be Incap, Roar, Bash, Capacitator Totem, whatever crowd control you can really get onto the other partners of the healer so that they can't help them in the stun lock, and you can just kind of absolutely KO and wreck them. And that's what we're about to see play out in this specific video. Main goal is to just beeline, get to the healer as soon as possible, dump all of your cooldowns, and kind of roll and see what you get in terms of critical strikes and what you don't get in terms of critical strikes, because that's where the fireworks start. So I just charge immediately at the priest in a beeline, start getting my dots up so I can increase my damage with my conduits, and then I'm just coordinating with my paladin, requesting, when can they get in position, when can they use Hammer of Justice. You want to use your defensives a little bit aggressively to stay on top of the enemy healer, so I'm bark skinning right away. I'm preparing to deal with kind of the Feral Druid's first round of cooldowns. We've used Incap, and we dropped Spirit Link. Honestly, a little bit miscoordinated. Could have probably just used a Blessing Protection, but regardless, bash the Druid, Hammer of Justice, Solar Beam the healer, drop every cooldown in the spellbook, and just Star Surge, Star Surge, Star Surge. Easy game, easy life. And you are just going to be dropping healers left and right with this composition. You don't always have to drop healers. This was just an example of the first clip that I wanted to show you. There are other matches where we swap targets and then go back to the healer, but I would say that it is most effective when you can connect to a healer with Hammer of Justice and Solar Beam, that you do so. So we have another clip here in the previous game where we were fighting a Restoration Druid. So we can't really do the same thing to a Restoration Druid because they can use Bark Skin. They have automatic healing when they're stunned. So we'll go on the DPS instead. We use a Cyclone on the Ret and a stun on the Druid to crowd control them so they can't help each other. The Ret trinkets out to break the stun on the Druid, and then we can just dump all of our Star Surges into the Warrior here, and my Ret Paladin is just going to go after the Ret Pally after we've redirected a bunch of sack damage and just absolutely take them out of the game almost effortlessly. I was looking at the Warrior thinking, oh no, they've used all their cooldowns, they're not going to die to our opening burst, but the Ret Paladin ends up falling over. So it's not always just you got to beeline at the healer. With Resto Druids, I would definitely suggest that you switch targets. If a Resto Druid is getting too close, getting a little bit too cheeky, then definitely punish them. Don't let them just kind of stand on your team and cast Cyclones. You can kill Druid, but chasing them and trying to run them down is likely going to be a lot more difficult for you. When we just jump forward here into some other clips as well, we've got Turbo Cleave here. I'm trying to remember if we won this game. Some compositions were very challenging for us. Other ones not so much. I would say that Mage Lock was our most difficult matchup. But into these Cleaves with Druid healers was also pretty tough, but this one didn't have a Druid healer. So we've got two options here. We can Solar Beam the Priest and use Hammer of Justice on the Shaman. This way we stop the Shaman from healing, we stop the Priest from healing. I think that's generally a more effective strategy. So we're going to use Solar Beam on the healer, stun on the Shaman. Priest gets out of our beam. We can use Incap to CC them a little bit more and try and cast Cyclone. And this way, we're still CCing the priest and try and get out some damage. Now, of course, they peeled us during that attack, so we didn't get too much damage out. And now the enemies have their Conqueror's banner out. They've got their massive ramp of damage available. So this is where you want to be kind of thinking about running away, cycloning, healing. While it is kind of super fun to just run in with your massive burst damage. I would recommend respecting enemy cooldowns, especially Fury Warriors. I think we're all pretty well aware of how strong Fury Warrior is when they have those Conqueror's banners up. So just make sure you're using Cyclone during that time. You're dropping your Earthen Wall totems. You're using defensive cooldowns and trying to bolster yourself up to survive through the winter that is that Conqueror's banner. And as soon as you've survived it, then you can start getting a little bit more cheeky on top of healers for swaps or setting up solar beams. This comp is very much so kind of like burst oriented. So you don't want to try and be trading with a cleave like this, doing damage into each other unless you have your cooldowns up, like your celestial alignment. But this team is using their barriers, they're using their walls. It wouldn't be wise for me to send my celestial alignment at this time. It's better to just save my damage, find that moment, and then send a ton of burst all in at that specific moment. I found that to be the most effective. Coordinate that with your partner, so if they've got like a wings proc or a seraphim available, so you can dump your damage together. So here we've got a cyclone onto the priest. This is a good time to stun the shaman. This removes all of the healing. And then we decided to go on the warrior. We dump all of our cooldowns while we've got CC on the shaman and the priest. We get enraged regen from the warrior. And then we were going to hex the shaman. Unfortunately, a lot of our damage is cleave, so hexes are going to start to break. And I think that's when we realized that that strategy was not going to be very effective, and that going after the shaman would likely be better. We still want to just be dumping our star surges during this time, maintaining our time-worn Dreambinder legendary stacks and maintaining our Moon Kenora stacks and making sure our star surges are flying out during eclipse, so we're getting a discount. It's really important to try and make sure that you're always in an eclipse when you're bursting, because you will be getting more star surges out during that time. And then we're just going to keep dropping our instant lunar strikes to keep getting astral power going. We get stunned here. We don't have bark skin. Kind of a scary moment, but they don't have any offensive cooldowns active. We don't see any recklessness procs. We don't see any feral spirits. So we can come out of the stun, cyclone the shaman, get into bear farm, use frenzied regeneration, and recover. And especially important to use frenzied regeneration as soon as you go into bear farm, because you should have the conduit that gives you extra HP when you shapeshift into bear. And so your frenzy regen will heal you for more. They make a swap over to the rep paladin. We start pushing in and we start using our hammers onto the priest rather than the shaman. And then we were just going to kind of like run down the shaman with damage and see how that went, because the cross crowd control chains were not necessarily the most effective. And during that, we got the human racial from the priest to break out of the stun. We can then use solar beam, so they still can't escape that crowd control. And we can continue to send star surges over at the shaman, making sure we're in eclipse. And with this cross crowd control, we were able to get astral shift. I could have cycloned the shaman here instead of the priest. I think that likely would have been a better opportunity, but with the astral shift being active, damage reduction is going to be too high for the shaman to die. So removing the shaman from being able to off heal, removing the shaman from being able to do damage would have likely been better in this position. And I think that's what I end up trying to go for after the priest is completely out of crowd control. So you always want to be trying to cyclone targets when they're low. Again, your kill pressure with this composition is during the stuns, during the solar beams, whenever your paladin has wings or you have incarnation. And outside of that, you need to be focusing on defense, durability, trying to stay alive and make sure that nothing bad is happening. So here we can see recklessness active for the warrior. Our rep paladin is running away from that, running away from the shaman during their cooldowns. We don't have our solar beam, we don't have our hodge. So this is kind of the moment where we're going to be running away, similar to like an RMP playstyle, but just with a giant zealot wielding two-handed rep paladin and an angry chicken bird instead of a fire mage and a rogue. So we've got control of the warrior, control of the shaman. We've survived their recklessness. We've kited it. So we're waiting for our stun to come up. Now we're trying to get our dots on our targets, get ready for a big push here, build up our astral power. We're one cast away from getting into eclipse. So we're trying to cyclone the healer so we can use hammer of justice. We get stunned here. Otherwise would have casted starfire and maybe killed the shaman. They trinket and pop their aegis, and we haven't really used any cooldowns. So we're pretty happy with the shaman's response to that, but it is Conqueror's banner, and we can see that with the green icon here on the warrior's frame. This is when a warrior is the scariest in the game, so we're going to start running away. We baited the shaman trinket, we baited the aegis, we baited the rapture, so run away, a little bait and switch, cyclone up the shaman, prevent them from connecting during the Conqueror's banner. We'll throw some roots over onto the warrior, and we'll just wait for our diminishing returns so we can crowd control the healer, get ourselves to full astral power, get us one cast away from eclipse so we can activate eclipse, empower Fury of Elune, send some damage. We got our solar beam. We're really pushing for the kill. We don't really care about pain suppression at this point. We eventually have to get through these cooldowns. They blink out of the solar beam, so we need to crowd control them again. We're going to cast Cyclone and keep our dots up, maintaining our astral power, getting ready to send more star surges. We got to kill grounding totem, try and kill static field totem. There's a lot of things you got to target against this composition, which can be a little bit annoying, but we finally got through all of the different totems, and we can use Cyclone now on the shaman to stop them from connecting during their recklessness. We didn't get the kill in that window. We got another cooldown. We got another pain suppression. Our Ret Paladin still has Avenging Wrath. So as long as we can stay alive, we should be able to send damage out here. We'll knock the warrior away from the Shattering Throw, try and keep him distanced away from my Paladin as we're quite low at this point. Then Mind Control our Shaman, getting a little bit scary, getting a little bit sketchy. Like I said, hit and run. This is the run phase. This is going to be the hardest part of the game if you get any of these matchups which last beyond the opener. But to be fair, I think if you're trying this composition at lower rating and you're trying to climb for the first time, you will just completely crush healers right out in the open. And here the Shaman overextends. We Cyclone the Priest. We pop Avenging Wrath. We aim to try and Cyclone the Trinket. We get Priest Trinket and we get Shaman Astral Shift. There are a lot of defensive cooldowns, especially when you get a Night Fae Priest, reducing them so significantly as well. But in this position, we're just cleaving 2 targets now, getting ready to go into our next Eclipse, trying to Cyclone the Astral Shift. We don't want the Shaman attacking when they're not going to be going down. And we also just don't want to be taking damage during Recklessness, which is this little red icon on the warrior. Spell Reflect is up. Shouldn't have casted Star Surge into that. That is a mistake. You want to make sure that you're using Moonfire to remove that. Ultimately, Soothe is usually the best thing you can use to remove that, but it's not a really big deal if you're going to use Moonfire. We're going to root the warrior, Cyclone the Shaman during the run phase. And you can see that even with these kind of hit and runs, we're actually running the enemy healer out of mana, which is going to be more than perfect as a win condition. If they keep rotating through defensive cooldowns as they have been to survive, we can ultimately just win this with pressure. We get a stun onto the Priest. We could swap to the Priest. A little bit tougher to kill a Disc Priest because when they take physical damage, they get focused will damage reduction. So instead, we go for a Cyclone, and we're going to dump Star Surges here. We're not in an Eclipse. This is the first time where I think that it's not worth it. I'm 2 Starfires away. Those are very slow, and we've got CC with no trinkets, so it's better to just send the Star Surges in that instance. And we end up winning the game by chaining the Hammer of Justice into a Solar Beam. And you can see that it's a bit of a mix of kind of CC the healer, run away, CC the healer, burst, run away, those types of hit and runs. But in the opener against some of these comps, you can definitely just target healers as you saw in the previous clips. Regardless, I had a lot of fun with this. I'm enjoying experimenting with some different combinations and trying something different. I feel like, I don't know how many of you are kind of just tired of the same flavor of the month stuff that's been popping up, Fury Warrior, Ret Paladins, Fire Mages, and that type of deal. So I wanted to kind of mix it up here, give something new to try, and then show you all what it was capable of if you wanted to give it a go. Definitely a fun composition, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.